Hello and welcome to Infrastructure Matters, the podcast dedicated to exploring the dynamic world of infrastructure, asset management, and public works. I'm your host, David Jenkins, Chief Executive of IPWEA. In today's episode, we're joined by Anand Pillay, Chief Executive Officer of Parks and Leisure Australia, for a conversation on the future of parks, public spaces, and green infrastructure. We explore why parks and open spaces are essential to healthier, more connected communities, how local government can better manage rising infrastructure costs, and why collaboration between parks professionals, engineers, planners, and asset managers is becoming more important than ever. We'll also discuss social prescription, tree canopy, urban growth, accessibility, activation, and how public spaces can draw people outside and bring communities together. So, grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for a practical and timely conversation on why parks and leisure infrastructure matters. All right, so welcome to Infrastructure Matters, and I'm delighted to have Anand Pillay with us today. He's the CEO of Parks and Leisure Australia. Now, Anand, you are the one of the lucky recipients of our Infrastructure Matters mug. What do you think?
Thank you. Truly privileged. It will take... What's the saying? Straight to the pool room. Straight to the pool room.
Straight to the pool room. But you like a coffee up in Townsville as well, so this will be on in your kitchen cabinet ready for making your next coffee, right?
Absolutely.
You can't buy these things, you know that, don't you?
No, but can you sell them?
Well, I've heard on eBay they go for at least a couple of $100. Is that right, Alan? He's heard all the same. He's heard these jokes so many times before, but he always laughs and smiles just to make me look good. Okay, so and let's get straight into it. So I had the pleasure of meeting you actually at the Parks and Leisure National Conference down in Tasmania, and I thought you guys put on an absolutely fantastic show and really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Maybe you could just give a bit of a snapshot of Parks and Leisure and where you're going and what are some of the key things that you're focusing on at the moment and your members, because you've got a broad mix of membership. Maybe you could just give the audience a bit of a taste.
Yeah, sure. Like you said, really broad mix of membership. The tagline that PLA has used for a number of years is "We're the people behind the places." Around about 3,500 members. A lot of those members, certainly the largest sector of members is local government.
Yep.
So a lot of local government members, but we also have members from the commercial part of the industry, academic, public institutions, government, state and federal. So quite a broad base. We generally have, as the people behind the places, people involved in every aspect from the people that'll write policy, design spaces, build spaces, maintain spaces, activate them. So we cover the full range of people as members of PLA.
And in terms of the membership and the profession in general, what are some of the key challenges that you're seeing and the members are telling you, some of the issues that they're facing? And opportunities. Let's keep it positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well.
I think probably easily the biggest challenge that our members are talking about is the cost of infrastructure. Probably something that you guys would be, or you and your members would be well aware of, and how we actually manage infrastructure costs. And it's a wicked problem because we can't control the market. I mean, we can't even influence the market. So it's about how do we get maybe a little bit smarter, a little bit sharper in some of our practice when we're actually building park leisure-related infrastructure.
And how much of an intersection does your membership play with our members? So typically our members, local government as well, not all, local government engineers, directors of infrastructure assets. Are you seeing a greater interplay with your members and our members?
Yeah, I think we are. I think there's always been that link between the engineering part and probably the leisure and recreation part. Typically they sit in the same department. But I think from my point of view, we need to be a little bit more proactive about that interplay and that linkage.
Yeah.
Because if you're talking about a park, how do you get to the park? Yeah, there's a road, there's a bike track, there's a pathway that leads you there. When you're at the park, the built infrastructure is as important as the green infrastructure. Yeah. And by that I mean for things like accessibility.
Yeah.
So there's a whole range of places where what we've tended to see, I think, is separate disciplines or separate skill sets need to merge.
Yeah.
And I think parks and public space is definitely one of those where your members and our members definitely should be working together.
Now, you know, and when you know that we've done some work on green infrastructure and natural assets, and you know that's what I spoke about at your national and also your state conference as well. But you would innately already know the value of green infrastructure and natural assets.
Yes.
Well, your members would already understand that, and linking that into social outcomes, health, welfare, and all that sort of stuff. We put together the Green Infrastructure Management Manual that actually tries to put this into an asset management planning framework.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? And because I guess we're coming at this from the angle that, you know, green infrastructure, natural assets have been seen as a nice to have, but no one's actually looking at how they're being measured, valued, etc. Do you see this? I mean, I don't mean this to be a leading question, and you could disagree, but you know, how do you see that all playing out? And sort of the thinking around the asset management planning framework for green infrastructure. Do you agree with it? Disagree with it?
No, agree with it. I think while I agree with it, the structure is good.
Yeah.
You know, most of our public service agencies will require structure.
Yeah.
If you're going to maintain any kind of infrastructure, you need a budget. You need to know how you're going to do it. You need to be able to forecast those things. So the structure is good. I think that we also need to acknowledge that green infrastructure is probably a little bit different. At the risk of offending all of your members, I think there may be a slightly more dynamic nature to green infrastructure than there may be, and I'm certainly no expert in the more traditional infrastructure.
Yeah.
You know, if you were at Kings Park in Perth, it would be a horrible shock to the system when shot hole borer turned up in some of the most valuable assets that you have, great trees that you know, now have this disease that we're unable to resolve, unable to manage. So I think that dynamic nature of green infrastructure is something that is probably a bit different to what you would typically have from hard infrastructure. That dynamic nature would mean that we need models that are probably potentially more flexible and able to respond to changing demands. I mean, it's so susceptible to climate, major weather events, and a whole range of other things. So I think the structure is good, but it may be a little bit different.
We tried to work or focus on a shared language with these things, right? So, you know, the engineering profession talks about asset management. It's got specific terms. And we tried to break that down a little bit into the Green Infrastructure Management Manual because, you know, if you're managing open spaces, leisure facilities, natural assets, you know, that's a domain of both your members and our members. Do you think there's more that needs to be done there?
Yes. Shared language always makes things a lot easier. But language is also important because it creates a bit of identity, I think.
Yeah.
And if you're part of a certain cohort or profession, you know, there's a language. You know, you're not flashing gang signs.
Yeah.
But you know, you soon know when you're involved in a conversation with somebody who is part of that cohort of people.
Yeah.
I think, like all things, balance is important. So if there's technical things that we should be using the same language for, great. But also by its nature, I think language also creates a belonging to a particular organization or field of people, and that's okay too.
Yeah. Okay. Now you're going along to one of the universities tonight, and we were just having a chat over lunch, and you're talking about social prescription.
Yeah.
And I know that you've done a lot of work on linking open spaces to health benefits.
Yeah.
Could you explain a little bit more about the work you've done there and this whole idea of social prescription and sort of where that's going?
Sure. I think one of the challenges for us, probably in the decade previous to this, is being able to get some sophistication about how we measure and articulate the business case for the things that we do. You know, people have known for well over 100 years that access to nature, being able to spend time in parks and gardens, being physically active, all benefit your health.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I don't think we've been able to carry that argument to make it result in greater investment in parks, gardens, sport and recreation facilities. So the search, I guess, or the quest has been to work out how we actually articulate a better case for more of this as opposed to less or the same. And I think there's been a lot of research, a lot of academic partner institutes. For example, PLA has, as part of its national awards, a research award, and they've had that as something for a long time. So we're definitely supportive of that, being able to take that research and bring it down into more consumable chunks, so that not everything is about an elevator pitch, but we're able to tell the story at a whole range. If you want to sit down and listen to the 3-hour marathon, we can give you that. But if you've literally only got 5 minutes, and we can talk to you about that as well. And we need to make that kind of information available to our members, because our members are the ones that really amplify the voice of the industry. So that the health connection is really important. I think what we've seen the growth in more recently, or the acknowledgement of more recently, is the development of the social connection that you get by participating in physical activity or being out within your community. And nature-based settings are a perfect place for that. We've got governments that are appointing, ministers for loneliness. I think we've got, I don't know what qualifies as epidemic proportions, but epidemic proportions of loneliness, youth mental health issues, and there's a whole range of issues coming out, certainly growing and having more visibility. And we think that parks, recreation, sport, and general physical activity participation are part of the answer. So for us, that's why it's important to be able to push into that space as well.
How do you see parks and open spaces developing into the future? To address some of these issues, are they going to change? And before you answer that, is there anything that you've seen elsewhere in other countries that are doing things well, differently?
So this is a chance for me to put a business case to the board. This
Could be
is the start of my
Anand.
business case.
Could be Anand, yes.
Yeah, for a world study tour. That's right. That's right. I think probably some of the bigger challenges that we've got, or some of the bigger trends, not challenges. Some of the bigger trends. We're a largely urbanized population. In Australia, I think 60-odd% of the population lives in the capital city. 80-odd% of the population lives in our top 50 cities. Sorry. Most of the population growth in Australia, I think it's way over 90%, is in those 50 largest cities that we have. So the challenge is how we're responding to that. We know that there's a lot of growth in terms of the outskirts of cities. We don't seem to be fans of density as much as maybe other countries are, because we have land that's available. So urban sprawl is a real thing. But even where we do have density, how do we actually build, the suburbs that enable physical activity? How do we create environments in those suburbs that draw people out? Because there's a whole range of competing priorities. There's a whole lot of things that are there to keep us indoors that probably weren't as much as previously. So how does the environment that we live in, or the context that we live in, actually draw us outside? And if it's not welcoming, if it's hot, there's no tree canopy, there's no places to sit, be contemplative, kick the footy, whatever it may be that you want to do, then you're going to be inside. So I think in terms of building new suburbs, that's particularly important. If you come to a place like Sydney and you live somewhere in the inner city, your recreation spaces, your green spaces, your public open spaces are going to look a little bit different. How do we make sure they're accessible? How do we make sure they're safe? How do we make sure that they're inviting to people? So I think there's a couple of different challenges there. If we look at growth, one, building new suburbs, how do we combat that idea of urban sprawl? And we actually invite people outside, helps build a sense of community, helps the physical activity element of it. So I think there's a whole range of challenges there. There's so much pressure at the moment, and turn on the TV on any given day, on housing. Great. We need more housing. How do we make sure that the quality is there in the things that surround the house?
So do you think you and your members have a strong enough voice in that? Because everything that you've just said makes complete sense. But then, the decision-making table,
Yeah.
do your members have a big enough voice for these sorts of things?
No, I don't think we do. And I think it's more because when in some of those areas where we actually rely quite heavily on the regulatory environment to put us there, quite a few, and my understanding, a lot of the regulatory environment was based on, percentages of land that was available, and then there's a whole bunch of ways to get around that. And I think quite a few of the states are looking at some of their regulation right now. So there's opportunities for us to have input into those things. But I think we probably need to be a little bit more intimately involved. And if I go back to the bit about us building the case and being able to articulate the case, that's really up to us, for us to have a better seat at that table. But the fact that so many, I think there's at least 3, maybe 4 states that are reviewing their planning regulations and how they actually allocate open space and parkland in areas for recreation.
I want to pick you up on something you said. You said drawing people out into parks and open spaces. When you think about the priorities for drawing people out, is it what's available? Is it the security aspect?
Yeah.
Is it what are the priorities when it comes to these things to actually get people out into these places?
There's been some research done on this, and I think some of it was done here at the University of Sydney. Professor Thomas Astelbert has done quite a bit of work on this, and that's the stuff that I'm aware of. I know that tree canopy is definitely one thing that will draw people up. If there's a good tree canopy, you have that urban cooling effect. It seems to be something that welcomes people up. Having proximity to good open space or parkland or sport and recreation facilities is another thing that will tend to draw people out. But proximity itself, I don't think is enough anymore. Having beautiful green space that is, comfortable and accessible and safe and all the other things that you'd want is great. But I think we're now at the point where we actually need to see that as the stage, and we may need some activation off this. You need to have something on the stage. Yeah. And I think a lot of local governments are now trying to program things, run activities in parks to draw people out. So you need a physical environment, but I think it also helps when you're able to put things on that people want to attend. Yeah, yeah.
I wrote an article, and by the way, this isn't about me, it's about you, but I did write an article about playgrounds and the value of playgrounds, because until you have children, young children, you don't actually realise how valuable these things are. And obviously our members build a lot of playgrounds. But also and we had just our conversation just downstairs, you mentioned parkrun, and I go, that is a phenomenon, because I do parkrun, and that's a phenomenon that really is just been amazing. And you think about it's a global thing, and it doesn't matter pretty much where you are in the world, you can probably access a parkrun somewhere. And that is using parks and open spaces, and it does a number of things. It gets people out, it gets people healthy, it gets people active, but there's the social element as well. And you just see these places get bigger and bigger, and you meet the same people and you have a chat, and it brings people together, which is really the ethos of everything that you're doing, and really that in itself sells the fact of what your members do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've hit an important point there. Parks and open space, any kind of public amenity is going to be most successful, in my view, if it covers the span or the age range of people in a family. So everyone from the youngest kid to the grandparent or the great-grandparent, if there is something on offer for them, I think you're likely to draw a family out. And that's part of the challenge for, I think, our modern public open space parks, recreation areas, is that we need to be relevant to as much of the population as we can.
And just changing the subject slightly, where do you see PLA going in the next sort of 2, 3, or even 5 years? So if we were to sit down in 5 years' time, when I'll have more grey hair, and where do you think, where will PLA be then? Yeah.
I think for us, we're seeing our role as an advisor to government a little bit more. I think that it's part advocacy, but also the general nature of physical activity in the spaces, and you gave parkrun, great example. There seems to be a lot more organic development of physical activity options. Structured sport has its place, structured activity has its place, but I think that the organic nature or the unstructured nature of some of those things is really important. And the public service and I think the policy arms of governments or a whole range of agencies are grappling with that. Yeah, how do we actually put some structure on something that doesn't have any structure, and it's successful because it doesn't have too much a structure? Who advocates for those things? Who's able to talk to us about those things? Who's able to give us access into that world? So I think our role as an advocate and as an advisor to government and think tanks and those sorts of people will become more important. And particularly going back on to the earlier topic about linking health and well-being outcomes back into physical activity parks, open space. I think that will continue to grow, and it'll become a greater understanding of incidental physical activity options. Going for a walk in the park, we already know that your most popular physical activities are not within the structured sports segment. How do we grow off that strength? So I think they're the things that will propel parks and leisure forward into the future. It's also, we spoke about this earlier on. It's pretty easy to live in the bubble, and all of us in a particular profession or in a particular sector live in the bubble, whether we realize it or not. And for us to keep advancing and learning, we actually need to step outside the bubble. We need to be able to be brave, learn from other industries and other people about exactly, what do they do? How do they do it? That's where the inspiration and thinking will come from, is from us getting together with other people. I'd like to think that PLA could be at the forefront of some of that thinking. But ultimately, the most important thing for us is to provide exceptional member services.
Yeah. If you're and hopefully there are some young people listening, if you're a young person and you're thinking about a career in public spaces, parks, leisure, why would you do it, and how would you go about doing it? Is it something that you fall into, or is it something that, where would you go to find more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Coincidentally, good segue, we are actually launching, and I don't know the date, I know it's this month, a webinar that links parks and leisure students, so university students, with some practical institutions, local governments and others. So if there's somebody who is currently a student who is interested in getting a little bit of practical application, this local government university collaboration project is what we're calling it. There's a page on our website that will take you to a whole range of, if you're somebody working in a local government interested in a university course, it'll do that. But if you're a student looking for some practical application, it'll help you do that. There's a whole range of, depending on what part of the industry, a whole range of courses that you can get involved in. There's micro-credentials, but most local governments are looking for people to work in their parks teams, in their sport and recreation teams, their community development teams, planning, open space. There's planning degrees, landscape architecture degrees, a whole range of avenues into the industry.
Yeah. Okay. And do you talk about parks and leisure as an industry or a profession?
I think parks and leisure is an industry. Yeah. And there's a whole range of professions within that industry. And go back to the opening of this about our membership, broad base. Yeah. I think it'll keep expanding. I don't think it's something that'll contract into special, like there's special areas in there. Yeah. But I think the footprint of it will keep expanding. Yeah.
And I didn't, maybe I missed it, but just in terms of some of the international areas where parks and leisure and open spaces are done exceptionally well differently. Is there anything from your experience, because you were a practitioner as well? Yeah. Anything that you've seen, it could even be national, it could even be domestically, where they really do manage these open spaces really well. Is there any good examples you can provide?
I think we do it really well domestically. I think in terms of management, I think you just have to look at some of the amazing public open space that we have, some of the amazing parks here. So I think Australia does genuinely set some benchmarks in the industry. I think those areas that we're looking to grow in are places that we can learn from other communities and other countries. I think the way Singapore do density and green spaces within density and creating environments, and it's much warmer than, I live in North Queensland, it's even warmer than there. So, but I think being able to manage the climate and still be able to, in a really population dense environment, create good opportunities. Singapore seemed to have, unlocked the way to do that.
Yeah.
I guess for me, probably the other part of the country that we could learn from is probably some of our regional and remote communities. And I don't know whether it's by virtue of, and I've had a lot of experience as a practitioner in those areas, but they're able to create that sense of community. They're able to draw people out in involvement a little bit more. And there's a particular sense in some of those places, that sense of community, and they're very proud of that, and rightly so, because it's a tough thing to be. We're in an environment where the number of volunteers is decreasing, the amount of hours that people volunteer is decreasing. So, I think, domestically, I think we can learn a lot. We can learn a lot from each other before we look too far overseas. I've got to say, Recreation Aotearoa, our sister organisation in New Zealand, I think are also particularly sharp when it comes to learning some lessons about how we manage parks and open space.
And just on the last question, you stepped out of the practitioner space and are now running the Association for Practitioners. That's very, very different. How have you found that?
Yeah, good. I hope at least some of the board members are listening to this. Exceptional, great organisation. Love being here. No, it hasn't been without its challenges, but I've loved every minute of it. I think the timing was right for me. I get to have a little bit of both worlds. I get to talk about the industry that I love and value greatly, but I also get to help shape the direction that we take, and hopefully push the industry ahead into some of those spaces that we spoke about today. So perfect timing for me. Probably should have done it earlier.
I said that was the last question, but I've lied here.
Yeah,
is there anything else you'd like to sort of leave the audience with?
Probably from a Parks and Leisure Australia point of view, I think we're open to conversations. We don't know what we don't know.
Yep.
I'm pretty keen for us to start to move outside the bubble. We do. But, if you got a cracking idea, you think we're not doing something quite right, there's an opportunity for us to grow into a space that, we haven't considered or thought of. I'd love to hear from you.
Great. It's been an absolute pleasure, Anand. Thank you for coming along, taking the time. We've travelled all the way down from Townsville, not just to see us, obviously, but I really enjoyed it. And it's very obvious to me, just in the interactions I've had with PLA, that you seem very open to all the things that you just said, particularly with talking to the other, professions. And I wish you all the very best. And I hope that we continue the relationship between our two great associations. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, David. And thank you so much for the mug. Infrastructure does matter.
Limited edition. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
And that wraps up another episode of Infrastructure Matters. A big thank you to Anand Pillay for joining us and sharing his insights on parks, leisure, public spaces, and the important role they play in community health, social connection, and local infrastructure planning. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope this episode has sparked some ideas about how parks and green infrastructure can be better planned, managed, and valued as essential public assets. And before you go, we'd love to hear from you on Spotify. This week's poll is: what matters most in a great public space? Shade and tree canopy, accessibility, safety, activities, and events. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review Infrastructure Matters on your favorite platform, and follow IPWEA on LinkedIn for more updates and future episodes. I'm David Jenkins signing off, reminding you that in the realm of infrastructure, every detail matters.